Welcome to Under the Bun's Halo Infinite review. Finally. It's been a while since we did a video together, but since we're both pretty big Halo fans, we both wanted to give our thoughts and opinions about this game. Juan is going to start off the review with some general thoughts and feelings he had while playing the game, and I'm going to do my typical deep dive into the game's mechanics and story. So, here we go.
What is up, guys? Juan Snow here, other half of Under the Bun. Thank you for tuning in to our Halo Infinite review. It's going to be kind of more of a laid-back review this time. Not really going off of a script or anything like that. Just kind of going off of things that come to my mind when I'm talking about the game here. So let's start off with the first thing here. First of all, the game as a whole. The game as a whole is a solid game. I would definitely recommend it if you're on the fence about it, or anything like that. If you're on the fence about the game, I would definitely recommend that you go out and check it out, whether you go out and buy it, or you play it through Game Pass, or whatever like that. The game is definitely worth checking out.
It's enough.
They have made some improvements to combat, kind of like how I talked about in my first impressions video. The new equipment that you can use and the grapple hook and things like that are all great improvements to the Halo universe, and great improvements to the Halo universe. What a stupid thing to say. Great improvements to the Halo combat system. Swinging around by the grappling hook is super fun and satisfying. I also like using it to grapple towards enemies. I use it all the time for grappling guns to me and grenades to me, and then also the fusion core bombs. I love using that to kind of bring the bomb closer to me and throw it out. So it's definitely a cool improvement, and I would easily say that that's probably my favorite thing about Halo Infinite is the grapple hook. It's a lot of fun to use. And I hope that that's one thing from Halo Infinite that at least stays going forward with the games. Other improvements to gameplay are just small, simple little things. Combat mechanics seem a little bit more fluid here, and aren't that janky Halo 4 kind of weird combat mechanics that they had. The new guns, they're nothing to write home about. There are a couple cool ones here and there, but overall I found myself using the original ones, just the battle rifle and the assault rifle, shotguns, things like that. But I will say I definitely really enjoyed the commander rifle. I think that's new in this one, not 100% sure. I only played Halo 5 one time and kind of tried to forget about it. So if it's in Halo 5, I apologize about that. They did try and do a thing with like different types of energy swords. To be completely honest, I've used a couple different ones, and to me they all kind of seem generally the same. I'm not sure if it's something that I just haven't paid attention to enough, but to me it seems like it's pretty much the same type of mechanic, same sword. One's just like literally maybe a hair faster. But that's about it. On to the next thing. The open world aspect of the game. This is something that I've kind of been going back and forth with throughout the entire time of playing it. At first, going into it, I didn't like the idea of it being open world. Halo has always been kind of a level-based game for me, just level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, and you go through it, and each level is kind of open world. They had huge rooms. I remember some of the levels had like huge valleys and stuff like that you could run around in, but it wasn't like crazy open worldness like it is in this one. And once I started playing, At the start, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed having all this room to kind of play around in and kill stuff in. Um, I at first I did enjoy the open world aspect of it, and I can't really. I would assume that it's most likely just because I was excited to be playing Halo again. That I was kind of just like, whatever, I'll take whatever I can get. But after my first maybe 10 hours or so of the game, the open world aspect of the game really started to annoy me. They do have the fast travel, and they do have vehicles all over the place and stuff like that. But there are times where it's just, like, honestly, it's just a pain in the ass to have to go from one place to the other place, and like, you can fast travel, yeah, but then you have to drive another 2-3 minutes just to get to this one thing you want to do, or just to pick up this one little collectible that you haven't gotten yet or something like that. The aspect of having to go out of my way, essentially, to try and get stuff is definitely annoying. And I don't think that the open world aspect of it really made that big of a difference in the game overall. Yeah, it was open world, but I would say maybe half of the game took place indoors, for missions and stuff like that. So I feel like kind of the whole open world aspect of it was kind of more of like a hub to go from level to level, if that kind of makes sense. Most of the major levels and major moments in the game take place indoors, in a building. So it's not like the open world aspect of it is like a huge aspect of the game that it's like, oh my gosh, the game definitely needed this to be able to get the story across. Like, no, it didn't. Up next is the multiplayer. Oh, well, let me finish with the open world aspect of it. So yeah, I ended up at the end of it not enjoying it. So I do think that is definitely a negative point for the game. But up next with the multiplayer, I've been playing a lot of multiplayer. I've played, well, probably not a lot in your people's eyes. I've probably played about 60 to 70 matches or so. And I'm really enjoying it. It's really fun. I do wish there was a little bit of a variation in kind of game styles, but they are adding more here and there. I enjoy being able to customize my own armor, and everything like that, and I think that the skins that they have are really cool skins. And I know a lot of people, I know some people don't like the kind of samurai armor variant that they have, but I think that one's really cool. And I just unlocked it the other day, and I'm really enjoying it. But overall, I mean, Halo multiplayer is Halo multiplayer, in my opinion. It's fun, and it's fast, and it's it's Halo multiplayer again. So if you like Halo multiplayer in previous adaptations of Halo, then you'll like it in this one. It does, like I said, the combat's more towards the Halo 3 combat style, as opposed to the Halo 4 fighting style, which is good. And there's no loadouts or things like that like they had in 4. Everybody starts with the same thing. Everybody starts on the same level, which I think is a good thing.
Alright, folks, keeping on with the next section here. Up next we have the story aspect of the game. I won't lie, I've played Halo Wars 1, I haven't played Halo Wars 2. Otherwise I've played all the Halos. So I'm not sure if Halo Wars 2 kind of brings more of this stuff to light, which I would assume it does, because I'm not gonna lie, I was a little confused at the start of it. I wasn't exactly sure who this guy Master Chief was fighting was, and why it was such a big deal. Like, he got his ass kicked. Well, Master Chief got his ass kicked, which I was like, oh, okay. But then I was just kind of like, I don't know who this guy is, and then he blew up with the ship, and then all this other stuff happened. Yada yada yada. But they kept talking about him, and I had no idea who the hell it was. But going off of that, aside from that, small little thing at the beginning, I won't lie, the story was, it's hard to describe it. It was okay, is what I'll say. It definitely wasn't the best story that they've had, but it definitely wasn't as bad as Halo 5. It was an okay story. There wasn't anything in there for me that was really like all that groundbreaking that took place, or anything that like changed the Halo world in a huge way or anything like that. They were still kind of playing up that whole like Cortana was bad and like rogue AI thing, which I personally, I think the whole thing was stupid to begin with, but that's just me. So they kept kind of going off of that, and then at the end you find out other things, and they keep, like pushing the whole like romance between like Master Chief and Cortana, which like, okay, like I get it, like they're with each other, like they have feelings for each other, but like, I don't know. To me, that whole thing always seemed kind of like cringy. I feel like in the first couple games, 1, 2, and like 3, it was just kind of like, oh, like they're like best friends and they care for each other. But then like later on, they made it like, oh my god, they're in love and blah 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 and all this stuff. And I was just like, okay, like it's a little creepy. That's just me though. Like, I can understand how some people would like it, but I just thought the whole thing was a little cringy, but whatever. I still get to play Halo. That's all I care about at the end of the day. They introduced a new quote-unquote Cortana called the Weapon, which literally is just Cortana. She just talks weird. Not weird, talks different than her, and has like her own unique personality, which I liked. I liked her. At times she was kind of making jokes that were a little funny. Other times she was making jokes that were like super cringy, and I was like, oh my god, like please stop. But I kind of think that was kind of intended, that she was kind of supposed to be like kind of dorky essentially. And even Master Chief was making some jokes in this one, which I was like, damn, like homie got a sense of humor. He's not just all dark and brooding and must fight and must kill. Like, homie knows how to have some fun. Which I thought was nice. I thought it was nice to see him kind of coming out of his shell a little bit more. Not that he hasn't before, but it was nice to see that they kind of continued that along the way. Part of the story is like includes the open world aspect of it, which I touched on earlier. But they have these things like fobs and like mini bosses kind of that you can choose to fight. They're kind of like bounties, essentially. Which I thought some of the bounties were like straight up bullshit. Like some of them were ridiculously hard. And some of them, one of them was like the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And the other one was like crazy hard, and it took me like 10 tries to do it. Because some of these things like literally will like kill you in like 1-2 hits, which is bullshit. I guess it adds to the challenge, I guess. But yeah, I like I said earlier, I still don't think that the open world aspect of it is anything that they have to continue. If it's kind of like whether they do it again in the next one or not, which there is going to be another one. If it's kind of one of those things where like, oh, do we do open world or do we not do open world? I would suggest not doing it. Like I said, it didn't add anything groundbreaking to the game. It didn't add anything groundbreaking to the story or anything like that. So I don't think it's something that's necessary going forward. But I liked it as kind of like a one-off thing, but I wouldn't want to see it again. So yeah, I would say overall, the game as a whole, I would give it a solid. I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. This is probably my, if we're just going by the basic Halos 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Infinite, I would put this in my 4th position. With Halo 2 is my favorite, then Halo 3, then Combat Evolved, then Infinite, then 4, and then Guardians. For just doing those 5 or those 6 games, that's it. Obviously, there's a bunch of other games, but like I said, it would go Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo 1 Combat Evolved, Halo Infinite, Halo 4, and then Halo 5, which was garbage. So yeah, I would give this an 8 out of 10. Like I said at the beginning, I would definitely recommend it, either purchasing it or just playing it on Game Pass. I did play it on both Xbox and on PC. With Game Pass, it's kind of nice to be able to go between the two. I started it on Xbox on Game Pass, and I played it for about a week and a half or so, up until Christmas. And then I switched to my PC. Everything carried over, everything was nice and simple. I just logged on, hit play, and I picked up right where I was on Xbox, which was super nice. There wasn't really much of a difference between the two versions. Everything played really well. I never had any issues with like bugs or freezing or anything like that on either the PlayStation. Well, I haven't had any issues on PlayStation because I didn't play it on PlayStation, but I didn't have any Xbox issues or PC issues. Obviously, the graphics on the PC are a little better, and it's nice to go play with the mouse and keyboard. But like I said, they both run very well on both systems, and I was playing on the newest Xbox Series X. So I'm not sure if that would make too much of a difference. But like I said, everything runs very well. And the Game Pass thing is another huge aspect, which I really like. I randomly, like, when I started the beta, I don't know if it was like some random glitch or if they just gave coins to like random people, but I started with I think it was like 7,000 coins or something like that, or the points or whatever, something. I had like 7,000 or 1,000 or something like that. I had a bunch of stuff, and I was able to buy the battle pass, and I still have some extra, which was a nice surprise. I don't think I asked Nidstang, Aaron, the other half of Under the Bun, and he didn't get anything. So like I said, I don't know if it was a glitch or they just gave it to random people, but I had some, which was nice. But yeah, overall, like I said, a solid 8 out of 10. Definitely a must play. As far as like if I would give this game of the year, for last year, I honestly didn't play too much that was new last year. Last year was more of kind of a catch-up year for me. The only two things that I played that were new last year, honestly, I think was Guardians of the Galaxy and this. And I would probably put this as my game of the year for last year, but like I said, I didn't really play much last year, to be honest. But yeah, overall, again, a solid 8 out of 10. If you have a chance to play it, definitely go and check it out. If you don't have an Xbox or a PC, I'm not sure what you're doing with your life, so you should go get one of those so you can experience the joys of Game Pass, and then play it, because this is definitely something that you should play. So thank you guys for watching. As always, this is Juan Snow for Under the Bun. I hope you guys had a happy holidays,
and a good 2021. And let's hope it's a good 2022. And I hope you and your families and everybody you know stays nice and safe from the COVID. So yeah, thank you.
Halo Infinite seems like one of those games with reactions all over the place. Some people absolutely love it, some people absolutely hate it. I find myself kind of in the middle. There is a lot I like and enjoy, but there is also a lot I didn't really like. As someone who didn't really like Halo 4 and 5, Halo Infinite feels like a huge course correction and step in the right direction. However, I don't think it comes close to the original Halo trilogy in terms of gameplay, world, or story. So there's a lot I want to talk about, so let's get into it. The first thing I want to mention is performance. I played the game mostly on PC, but I did do a couple matches on the Xbox One. With my personal experience, it struggled a bit on the Xbone. It's locked at 30 frames per second, it dipped frequently. It's playable, but definitely not the same experience as on PC. My PC is underpowered at this point. It's a few years old and it's still running at 1070. I was able to run the game at a solid 60 frames per second at 1080p with minimal dips on high settings, so not quite maxed, but still high. The game did push my computer to its max though. I play on a laptop and my battery actually drained while plugged in while I played this game. This is the only game I've ever had that happen with. Also, I still have the same launch issues that I mentioned in my multiplayer review. Halo Infinite does not function correctly via Game Pass for me. It doesn't update like it should. I need to spam click the launch button and delete all these excess instances to play it. If I try to remove any part of the installation, like the HD texture pack that looks optional, it uninstalls the entire game and I need to reinstall the entire thing. It is extremely annoying. If anyone knows some fixes to get this game to launch correctly on Game Pass, please let me know in the comments. One of my biggest issues with Halo 4 and 5 was the art direction for those games. I didn't like Master Chief's armor design or the armor design of the other Spartans in general. The Covenant all looked different. The new villains, the Prometheans, looked very out of place in Halo with their very overly complex and busy designs. Halo Wars 2, which was released after 5, did return to the original Halo art direction though, and thankfully Halo Infinite continues to bring Halo back to its traditional art style. Master Chief armor looks about as good as it ever has, back to the Halo 2/3 design. The Covenant look like they did in the classic Halo games again, with the grunts getting their original goofy, high-pitched voices back.
I don't know my own friggin' address! What the heck am I supposed to tell them? I live somewhere?
The guns and vehicles also return to their classic designs, with some exceptions like new guns or banished variants. The visual design of the levels just oozes that Halo feel. It's a clean, sci-fi aesthetic that never feels like it dips too far into being too busy. The new banished weapons and vehicles fit this art style very well, expanding on the Covenant designs we've seen in the past with additions like blades and spikes that help these weapons feel more like unique banished weapons and not Covenant weapons. The banished armor all looks really cool too. The Brute War Chiefs, for example, have these huge helmets, giving them an air of superiority on the battlefield, and it helps differentiate them between different units in a battle. Many of the new bosses and officers have really cool designs too. Bassus looks insane with this huge Triceratops helmet. Jaga Urandama is badass with these dual red energy swords and sleek red and black armor. The only design I found a little distracting was that of the Harbinger. Not that there's anything wrong with her, she looks cool and fits the world very well, but because she reminds me so much of the Khan Maker, all I could think of was Doom Eternal when she was on the screen.
The Forerunner's lies are at an end. I am the harbinger of the truth. The Endless will be found. They will ascend.
You have broken the holy seal of Erdak. Your transgressions here will jeopardize all of creation.
All in all though, I'm very glad to see the original art direction return. Now for some things a little more negative. Before I get into any spoilers, just a basic overview. I found the story for Halo Infinite to be on the weak side. It completely ignores the majority of story beats that came from Halo 4 and 5, and while it does continue the story of Halo Wars 2, the way it's told is very disjointed, it's confusing, even for somebody like me who has played all of the games. I feel like it relies too heavily on the player having read through all the expanded universe books and comics to really understand what is going on. I've played all the games, including both Wars games, but I haven't read any of the comics or books, nor have I watched any of the shows, so there were specifics I felt like I was missing. I'll get to those things in a little bit. Anyway, Halo Infinite is pretty much a follow-up to Halo Wars 2. If you haven't played Halo Wars 2, I really recommend it. Its gameplay is simplified compared to other RTSs, but the story is really good, and the best story since Halo 3 in my opinion. It has really entertaining and well-made cutscenes, it's a really good introduction to the Banished, and it sets up Atriox to be the best villain Halo has ever seen.
You're in incredible danger.
Oh no. What was that?
It's him.
You're coming with us.
As I suspected. Nothing but a man.
Red Team Leader, this is Recon 1. You have multiple hostiles approaching your location.
Alice. We're leaving.
I seriously loved The Banished and Atriox following Halo Wars 2, and was really looking forward to seeing what they were capable of in Infinite. I'm going to get into the story of Infinite now. It's been long enough, none of you should be concerned with spoilers at this point, but if you are, jump to the next section. Halo Infinite starts with UNSC forces battling the Banished. Master Chief gets his ass kicked by Atriox and wakes up weeks later after the UNSC has been defeated and reduced to nothing more than a ragtag group of resistance fighters holding out against impending doom from the Banished. The opening cutscene is great. It looks great, it's really well animated, Master Chief is badass, and it really hits home just how scary Atriox is. Unfortunately, none of the cutscenes that come after are anywhere near this well made, as they all switch to this in-engine thing where somebody merely talks at the screen while things happen in the background. It's disappointing, since not only did this cutscene kick a lot of ass, but the Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo Wars 2, and even Halo 5 had some really good looking cutscenes.
Okay, let's do this. Let's see what we have here. This won't take long. I have good news and bad news. Last one.
It's one of those many examples where I think 343 was a bit rushed with the development of Halo Infinite. As I already said, Halo Infinite almost entirely disregards the events of Halo 4 and 5. The Prometheans are nowhere to be seen in this game. They aren't even really referenced. Cortana appears in flashback sequences in her Halo 5 design, continuing her role as the malevolent force that she became in that game, but we literally don't know what happened with the Prometheans, the Librarian, the Didact, the Warden, Locke, Buck, the rest of Blue Team, Fireteam Osiris, or any of the stuff that happened in between 5 and Infinite. I understand a lot of people weren't the biggest fans of the Prometheans as a faction, or the subplots with Locke and Buck, myself included, but it just really feels weird that they're gone from the story altogether. I don't necessarily think ignoring these plot points was the best way to go, because it just feels like something is missing, and makes Infinite's story a little confusing. Also, like I already said, Halo Infinite picks up where Halo Wars 2 left off, with the banished forces amassed going to war against the UNSC, but even as a follow-up to that, there are things that I feel like were kind of dropped. What happened to the Spirit of Fire, and Red Team, and Isabel? Or about the Banished campaign ending? Is there any follow-up to their encounter with the Flood? Again, the omission of these characters and references to these events makes for a disjointed story experience. And that isn't even taking into account other major story and character omissions like, where is the Arbiter and the Covenant allies? The entirety of Halo Infinite's story revolves around Master Chief slowly gaining territory on Zeta Halo as he rescues the remaining UNSC forces from the Banished. Accompanying him is his new ally, Fernando Esparza, aka the Pilot, and a new AI copy of Cortana known as the Weapon. At first, I didn't really like the Pilot. He's whiny and cowardly and not a typical soldier type that we see in Halo. But towards the end of the game, there's a revelation that changed my opinion of him, and I began to really like the character, looking at him in this new way. He's a different kind of character for Halo, but one that adds a more civilian point of view to a series which generally has a military one. I was not the biggest fan of the Weapon, though. She just isn't Cortana. She has a strong naivety to her. Her personality is just so bubbly it gets annoying. She comes off like a curious puppy dog instead of an intelligent AI. Her dialogue comes off as like MCU dialogue sometimes, where everything is an attempted joke, or like Under the Mayo said it best, straight out of Star Trek Discovery, personality and all. I know Cortana had a sense of humor, but I don't know, it just felt like Cortana's sense of humor was more witty and subtle and sarcastic, less forced, I guess.
Remember when you said new and dangerous?
Uh-huh.
You were right. Where are all these skimmers coming from?
Is that what we're calling them?
Well, I was also considering flying octopus monkeys.
Skimmers it is, then.
Who are these guys?
Hunters.
And what do they do? Don't answer that. Just get rid of them so I can get us in. Well, that's different. What now?
Down.
That was fun. Want to do it again?
The weapon's inclusion leads into a whole bunch of subplots pertaining to the weird Master Chief Cortana love story from Halo 4 and 5 too. The weapon slowly discovers who she really is and her relation to Cortana, what Cortana did at the end of Halo 5 and all that. There's a really cool scene towards the end where we see the original Cortana make a return, which I really liked, but yeah. I hope now that the weapon knows she's a copy of Cortana, she becomes more like Cortana personality-wise going forward. Building off that weird love story between Master Chief and Cortana, this game has a big focus on Master Chief and the weapon's relationship too. One that starts off more one-sided, as Master Chief is distrusting of her following the events of Halo 5, even going as far as to attempt to delete her, but slowly turning into a full-fledged partnership where they trust one another, once the weapon understands why Master Chief was so untrusting towards her at the beginning. The fact that the weapon can refuse to be deleted implies that she could potentially turn evil through rampancy if she refuses to be deleted down the line too. A repeating cycle. A Halo, if you will. Even more so than its direct plot, Halo Infinite's themes of loss and failure are really well integrated. We see a more human Master Chief, a chief who has come to terms with losing Cortana and didn't want to make the same mistake again with the weapon. A chief who consoles the pilot when all hope seems lost and becomes a beacon of hope for the remaining UNSC forces. A chief who, despite getting his ass beat by Atriox, doesn't back down and keeps fighting, moving forward. This is a chief overcoming his greatest losses and defeats, and it perfectly captures what makes him such a great character.
We all fail. We all make mistakes. It's what makes us human.
I'm sorry, Chief, but how have you ever failed?
Anyways, I really liked that this game re-established Master Chief as the lone Spartan again. I always liked how Master Chief felt like the sole remaining Spartan in the original trilogy. It made him feel more special and unique. I felt like introducing all these other Spartans in Halo 4 and 5 took away from that uniqueness, even if Master Chief is still the quote-unquote best Spartan. Since all these other Spartans have been defeated or killed or are missing in action, Master Chief again takes that role of sole surviving Spartan, and I really liked that. Though I do wish the Arbiter was in this game because I really like him as a character, and I think he plays such a good foil and ally to Master Chief. That said, I do like some of the other new Spartan characters, especially the ones from Halo Wars, and I wish we got some closure as to what happened to them after Halo Wars 2, and closure for characters like Locke and Bucky. Their whereabouts and status is left ambiguous. Anyways, having Master Chief act as the sole force against the Banished, slowly freeing the remaining UNSC forces, being reignited as a symbol of hope, and becoming the subject of both fear and admiration from the Banished was really great to see unfold. As I said before, I really liked the Banished in Halo Wars 2, and that still holds true here. They're a really cool faction, made up of the same alien species as the Covenant, but led by the Brutes. They are more brutal and aggressive than the Covenant were, fueled by pure rage and the desire for victory, not held back by the same dogma that held the Covenant back. They have new, powerful weapons and vehicles, and they ultimately defeat the UNSC. That's such a unique way to begin this game. I'll admit it was something I was a little worried about when I first saw gameplay footage for this game. You may remember me questioning why the UNSC looked like a ragtag freedom fighter force instead of a trained and efficient military, but that worry was put to ease because I thought Infinite did a really good job setting all that up. But one thing that made the Banished so cool was their leader Atriox. Atriox is so badass. Like I said, he kicks Master Chief's ass at the beginning of the game, something I was not expecting. I was very excited for Atriox to be established as this game's final boss, especially after seeing Chief get defeated. It established Atriox as a real threat, something to work towards and prepare for as an ultimate challenge. But then he's killed off-screen. What the fuck? You mean to tell me Atriox isn't the big bad? He dies off screen, and it's this Jamoke Escharum that's the main bad of the Banished? This guy we don't have a history with? Why? It was such a weird decision. Now, I played the game on Legendary, and doing so greets you with an extra cutscene that shows that Atriox is actually alive and well. I'm assuming Atriox is going to be set up as the main boss for the upcoming DLC, but still, I found it weird that they would set Atriox up to be the big bad in Halo Wars 2 and in the opening cutscene of Infinite, and then just to subvert expectations, they kind of kill him off screen, or at least it seems like they kill him off screen. But like I said, he's actually alive, and I'm excited to see what his role in the upcoming DLCs is. The story of Infinite was fine. It wasn't great, it wasn't my favorite, but it wasn't bad or terrible either. I just had a lot of unanswered questions and was really disappointed that the story threads from the previous games were just completely dropped, and Atriox wasn't as prevalent throughout the story as I hoped. And that's it for story. Risk of spoilers over, you can tune back in. Time for my favorite thing to talk about, and the thing that I think is Halo Infinite's strongest feature. The gameplay. Like I mentioned, I played Halo Infinite on Legendary, so my gameplay experience reflects playing it on that difficulty. In comparison to other Halo games, Halo Infinite's Legendary mode is by far the easiest. I'd say it's comparable to a heroic experience on the classic Halo games. There is still some bullshit, sniper jackals are back, you can get one-shotted by enemies with weapons like the gravity hammer or swords, brutes in armor could be annoyingly challenging at times. Don't get me wrong, it's a challenging game. I died a lot in some parts, and it can get super frustrating, but as a whole, I found this game's Legendary mode pretty manageable and for the most part balanced, with some exceptions I'll get into later. Enemy variation is pretty standard. Grunts, elites, jackals, hunters, and brutes all return. There are some new enemies, skimmers, which essentially function like drones from Halo 2 and 3, and a new type of sentinel that functions like the old ones. They provide enough variation to keep combat interesting, but there's nothing really new in Infinite. I did really like the white armored grunts. They look sleek, and I like that they're kind of elite grunts who have shields and can actually do some damage to you. The gunplay in Halo Infinite is great. It's the best since Halo 3, and in some ways I actually do like it more than Halo 3, believe it or not. The gun sandbox feels great. It's fast, it's frantic, it's fun. Everything that Halo should be. Every gun has their place, they're all fun to use, they're all strategically viable, except the Disruptor. I don't love the Disruptor and couldn't find a good use for it. It feels so underpowered compared to literally every other gun, and it became my most unused gun by a long shot. I know they can be useful against hunters, but compared to something like the Needler, which causes explosion damage against the hunters, I just couldn't justify using it. If I had to make any critique to the overall gun sandbox, it would be that I wanted more classic guns included. I missed the plasma rifle, the Spartan laser, the fuel rod cannon. Hunters even still use the fuel rod cannon, or at least something similar, and you can't pick up the weapon to use. Why? The brute shot was also severely missed. There's not another grenade launcher to replace it. Not to mention the brute shot was the brute's signature weapon from the old games, and it's just missing when the brutes are the main enemies here. I feel like the disappearance of these guns was due to the balancing of the multiplayer, which is a shame that the single player gun variety took a hit just for multiplayer balancing. The guns are broken up into 4 classes: kinetic, hard light, plasma, and shock. Kinetic weapons are of course useful for dealing damage to health and unshielded enemies. Hard light is useful against armored enemies and have a chance to disintegrate targets. Plasma is good against shielded enemies and breaks shields quicker, and shock weapons are useful against vehicles. You can of course use these weapons dynamically in a variety of different ways, but that's kind of their quote-unquote main purpose, highlighting the rock, paper, scissors element of Halo's core gameplay loop. Quick swapping between different guns, especially of different class, is very satisfying. Breaking a shield with a plasma weapon, then swapping to a kinetic weapon for a quick kill. Every gun also has an alternate version you can find around in the open world, or is an unlock for killing various bounties. These alternate versions are basically upgraded versions with slightly different behaviors. I found my favorite guns overall to be the Sentinel Beam, which is just a steady stream weapon. It's so satisfying to shoot and it does a ton of damage. And the Heat Wave, a new shotgun that shoots several bullets either horizontally or vertically. Again, just a super powerful gun. Other positive about the gameplay experience were the Spartan upgrades. There are several abilities that you can unlock and upgrade as you play the game. Shield, which basically just gives you more health. The Drop Wall, which is basically a defensive wall that you can put down to protect against upcoming fire. I do wish they could have upgraded it to a Bubble Shield because the Bubble Shield is a little bit more iconic and badass, but still the wall was cool. The Threat Sensor, which highlights enemies and exposes invisible enemies. The Thruster, which gives you a dash, and of course, the Grapple Shot. A grapple hook that lets you swing around the map, catch onto enemies, or pull explosive cords towards you. All these upgrades had their uses, but above all, I love the Grapple Shot. It is such a good inclusion in Halo Infinite. It feels great swinging around an arena, being able to pull in cores from afar and throw it like a bomb, and that ability that lets you charge into an enemy while you grappled onto them became my favorite thing to do. God, I love that. It actually threw me off coming back to multiplayer without the grapple shot, because I got so accustomed to using it constantly throughout the campaign experience. I hope the grapple shot stays a part of every Halo in the future because it is a great addition. The gameplay wasn't perfect though, and I do have some issues with some things. There are instances of stupid AI, especially when you can just sneak around and melee everyone in the back for easy kills.
Work faster. These Pelicans nearly on board and the power's still out. Don't let them get me. If Spartan asks for a tank, who am I to argue?
But my main issue are the bosses and the vehicles. The issue of bosses has always kind of been an issue with Halo as a franchise. Due to Halo's combat and design, it's hard to create a boss that feels both challenging and balanced. There were so many instances where a boss would just lunge across the map and one-shot me with a gravity hammer, or annihilate me from afar with a rocket or something, and it just gets so frustrating. Chipping away slowly at a boss with a bunch of health, only to have it completely one-shot you and you have to start the whole thing over again.
Escherump was correct. He is formidable. Payback shot.
This comes to a head especially during the Harbinger, the final boss, as she can teleport around and just destroy you in a couple of hits. If you die during the boss fight, you have to do the previous arena battle all over again. The final one has a fight against a brute war chief with a gravity hammer, and that is a challenge in itself. It just became an irritating fucking experience, dying and having to redo the fights over and over and over and over and over.
There! Last one's down!
So far, only to fail.
The thing is, I don't have a solution for this either. That's just how Halo is, and how Halo always will be without fundamentally changing how the game functions, and I don't want that. Or without fully removing all bosses altogether, which I also don't want. My favorite boss was the one against Jaega, as it required you to master your spatial awareness and use your threat sensor. It felt like a challenge that actually pushed you to use your skills that you mastered, and didn't just encourage you to cheese it. The other negative I had was that all the vehicles felt fucking worthless. They're all weak, they all get shredded like paper. Even the Scorpion tank just explodes in a couple hits. They're nearly worthless in combat. Flying vehicles are useful to get around the map quickly, which helps with secret hunting and getting to side quests, but the other vehicles are garbage even for getting around. They're constantly tipping over, getting stuck on the smallest of rocks and sticks. I've had vehicles completely bug out on me and be completely unusable, including this unique chopper, which I was bummed about. So instead of driving around, I found myself grappling around much more, since that was more fun and viable. Though I still flew around once I got aerial vehicles just to cut down on travel time, but again, for the most part, not viable in combat. There are a couple sections where vehicles are useful, especially in one mission towards the end, where you're attacking a main base with an army of Marines. That part feels good, gunning down Banished in a Scorpion or a Wraith, but for just getting around for the rest of the game, they're frustrating to use. and I 100% blame the open world design for that. Remember when I said this in a past video? Another thing that worries me are these drop areas where you can summon in vehicles and weapons on a whim. Not only does this look detrimental to the overall sandbox Halo is known for, as you don't need to search for weapons and vehicles deliberately placed in a level, but also looks like a balancing nightmare. What's to stop you from just maxing out on RPGs and power weapons and taking an OP weapon over to any area in this open world and just wrecking everything? Just take a Hornet, blast everything away from the sky, drop down for your quest EP, and fly away. And I can't help to think that this was just included to help with the downtime of traveling in open world. Well, I think 343 thought of that too, and their solution was to make all their vehicles weaker. It's possible to just come in with a Scorpion or a Hornet or something and kill everything from afar with some proper maneuvering or skilled placement, but I still just found the vehicles extremely weak. That said, you can just snipe everything from afar, and in fact the game kind of encourages it. Just running into battle, guns blazing, will get you killed, especially if there's brute war chiefs or sniper jackals around. I feel like the game encourages you to snipe enemies from afar before jumping in, and since you can just call a sniper rifle in at any fob for a side mission, that becomes a main strategy when dealing with side quests. Just call in your sniper rifle and pick everyone off before they know that you're even there. It's just another element that I think detracts from the overall sandbox gameplay of Halo. Why even bother finding new weapons or experimenting with the ones that you find when you can just hop over to a fob, call in a sniper rifle, and pick everyone off? Anyways, the last thing I want to talk about is level and world design. This is something that I am extremely mixed about. Halo traditionally is a unique first-person shooter experience, blending elements of arena shooters with some modern military elements, and most importantly, an open sandbox to explore and gain resources. But they always had a linear, well-designed level that these sandboxes eventually fed into. Yes, Halo had some open levels. Halo, the Silent Cartographer, the Ark, all these levels had big, open sandboxes with vehicles to find, but they ultimately still fed you into a specific path. And above all, they were still levels that you could come back to and replay. I'm bringing this up because, as we know by now, Halo Infinite is an open world game, and people often point to levels like the Silent Cartographer to justify that decision. But I think there's a difference between having a linear but open sandbox type of level and a full-on open world, in terms of design, in terms of playability, and in terms of function, and in terms of replayability. As it stands right now, there's no level select, so if you want to replay certain missions, you have to play the entire game over again. And it being open world, it's a long experience. And there's still no co-op. So when they add co-op, that means you're going to have to replay the entire game over again. You can't just jump into a certain level. And I feel like that's going to hurt replayability down the line, especially when you might just want to jump in and play a couple missions with your friends for a couple hours, instead of devoting a huge chunk of time to play an open world experience. It's no secret that I am not the biggest fan of open worlds. They don't often work for me. They often feel bloated, with too many repetitive chores to do. Now, open worlds work for some games, like Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row or Goat Simulator or something, games where the core fun just come from dicking around in a lively city. But I have fun with these kind of games as well, just kind of driving around doing my own thing. Or survival games where there's an emphasis on scrounging for resources. RPGs like Fallout can greatly benefit from having an open world, giving a player more freedom or making the game more immersive, where the emphasis of an RPG is usually more on exploration, lore, world building, and role-playing. So I'm not 100% against open worlds. They have their place and their function for certain types of games. What I'm against is applying open worlds to games that are traditionally linear and expecting those formulas to work. I don't think you could just slap an open world on any old game and get a good experience. I don't think an open world added any benefit to God of War 2018. I don't think an open world would add anything to a game like Doom. And in this case of Halo, I don't think it added anything either. In fact, like with God of War, I think the open world hurts the Halo experience. Open worlds will never be a good substitute for well-crafted level design. They just don't offer the same experience. And Halo was a series with well-crafted levels. Even the open sandboxy elements were specifically designed with purpose and flow. I've already mentioned one negative about the open world, the apparent nerfing of vehicle use to balance the experience, but there are so many other negatives to this design. For one is the obvious travel time. It just adds padding to the game, forcing you to travel all over the world, sometimes backtracking to find unlockables that you missed. I know I'm in the minority, but spending minutes traveling over a fairly empty environment just isn't fun for me. The side quests also get repetitive and tedious. There's like 20 missions of outpost takeovers, whether it's claiming fobs or liberating banished outposts, and there isn't much variation amongst those 20 side missions. The benefit of doing them, of course, is to find Spartan cores, unlock quick travel points, which is very useful, and to get weapon spawns so you can get your favorite guns easier. But they still feel tedious and repetitive as you go through. Like I've also said in the past, Halo is not an RPG. You don't keep the weapons that you find. You are constantly trading weapons for new ones in the battlefield as you find them. It's what makes the sandbox design of Halo so unique. Well, being able to summon your favorite guns before any side objective kind of reduces that sandbox down. You don't need to worry about finding your favorite guns because you can just refill all of your ammo or replace the guns that you don't like with the ones that you do. Again, I liked the Sentinel Beam and Heatwave Shotgun the best, so by the end of the game, I literally started off every side quest with those two guns in my possession. I had no need to engage with the sandbox, as I already had my two favorite guns available to me, and any guns that you would get rewarded to you felt less important because of that. There's also only one biome in Infinite. The entire open world looks the same. This adds to the feeling of tedium and repetition as well, since everywhere you go looks the exact same. This sticks out especially when compared to other Halo games where you had a plethora of biomes and different looking locations to explore. The only variation to Halo Infinite is the occasional cavern that you can find, and then the inside of a building versus the outside of a building. There's also a lack of cool spectacle events. There's no Scarab to take down. There's no Warthog run. No real variation at all to the objectives. Imagine how cool taking down a Scarab could have been with the new grapple hook mechanics, or some other kind of spectacle battle like that. The closest thing we get is the assault on that final outpost with the Marines. That part was cool, it felt badass, but that's really the only part that feels like that. With all that said though, when the game does scale down and you have a linear level to play through, it's great. I actually think the levels are very well designed, with very good enemy placement and balanced sandbox opportunities, where all the guns are laid out. It feels just like classic Halo, and I had a ton of fun with it. The opening level is especially well designed, where you play a pissed off and determined Master Chief going through a banished ship. It's full of throwbacks and references to past Halo games. The combat encounters do a good job getting you accustomed to the game's combat. There's this almost platforming feeling section, and it's visually different from what you see in the rest of the game too. It's such a great opening. Not to mention Master Chief unleashes his inner Doom guy.
It's locked down. Requires a hack.
Okay. And you can do that.
There's an arena towards the end of the game right before the Jaeger fight where you fight in this training room turned gladiator arena. Enemies come in from 2 spawn points and you have this massive arena to fight in. At this point in the game, you should be pretty upgraded, and utilizing all of your tools to their highest potential is so fun here. As you swing around, drop shields, dash away, utilize all of the weapons laying around, it's Doom Eternal levels of arena combat greatness. And I just wish the whole game was like this. The issue of being able to call in weapons at a fob is also alleviated in these linear sections as well, which once again reinforces the Halo sandbox and gameplay loop of finding weapons around the battlefield. Overall, I just found the best combat experience in this game to be these linear levels, and they are such an improvement over the open world design. Open worlds don't inherently make a game better, and the fact that the linear arenas of Halo Infinite are the best, most fun parts exemplify that. When all is said and done, I still really enjoyed Halo Infinite, and I still recommend it. In my opinion, it's the best first-person shooter Halo experience since Halo 3 and Halo Reach. The gunplay is Halo at its best, and I really like the inclusion of new gadgets like the grapple hook. The game is dragged down a little bit by its story and its open world design, but even with those negatives, it's still a fun experience. I'm glad 343 seems to finally have a grasp on what made Halo so special, and they are making the right moves to making Halo a great franchise again. I'm hoping that the DLC ties up some of those loose ends I have with the story, and it hopefully adds some needed variation to the open world experience. Or better yet, doubles down on the handcrafted arena-style design of the main missions. Anyways, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this. It helps the channel a lot. It's been a while since we had a video together, so we hope you enjoyed both of our opinions. And yeah, maybe see you in the Halo multiplayer. Have a good one.